Well, it's May the 5th, and that means Cinco de Mayo, and we are celebrating with a crunchy vegetarian tortilla soup that just happens to be gluten-free and vegan. So it's sort of a win-win-win-win, right? Hi, I'm Judy Matusky. I am a registered dietitian and culinary nutritionist with Athens Nutrition. So I'm happy to be here today. We're always cooking fast and light with 5-ish ingredients, at least ingredients and methods that are, relatively fast and easy without a lot of complicated steps. So thanks for joining me today. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. I did a little bit of pre-prep just to kind of keep things moving along. I have in a Dutch oven over here, I've already chopped up one fairly large onion, as well as 2 large garlic cloves that I minced up. Now with the onion, with this soup, at least my preferences, I don't particularly want, larger chunks of onion in the soup. I really want that onion to be a little bit smaller, so I finely diced it. I don't know if you can see, but I cut my onion a little bit smaller than I usually would. Usually I tend to use like a little bit of a larger dice, but this is a little bit smaller because I do want those onions to be, you just kind of break down and soften up, and so that you're not really biting into, a large piece of onion. So I have the onions and the garlic and a little olive oil in here. You could use another type of vegetable oil if you prefer. That's already just a few minutes because the onion is so small, it really cooks down pretty quickly. So that's ready to go. So the next step is to just add some chili powder, and I'm going to add a teaspoon of chili powder, and we're going to put that in just to for the heat and the spice. And I want this to bloom a little bit, in a sense that I'd like the chili powder to just mellow a little bit, but also bring out some of its flavor. So I'm going to just saute it just for a few seconds in the pan with the onion and the garlic. All right. And that's pretty well to go. You can already start to smell. It's really smelling great. So now I'm going to add just a little bit of ground black pepper. I'm not going to add salt because I'll talk a little bit about the broth that we're going to use. I just don't think I'm going to need extra salt in this, and if I do, I'll just add it at the end. So I'm just going to add a little bit of ground pepper. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add the tomatoes. So this is just, I'm going to move this off for just a second. These are just whole peeled tomatoes. You can use any brand you want. It doesn't really matter. I wouldn't go out and buy the San Marzano tomatoes for this. This says San Marzano style of tomatoes, so they're not the real deal. You just need some, plum kind of peeled tomatoes. I already kind of crushed them up a little bit in the can. I just kind of took a little knife and sort of just broke them up. You can crush them with your hands if you want to as you're putting them in. So we're just going to pour the whole can in. I think the original recipe says to drain them, but I want that tomato juice to be to be as part of the soup. So I'm not going to drain the tomatoes. Let me just bring them back on heat. I'm going to put this up a little bit. And then the other thing we're going to add is we're going to add some Chipotle and Adobo sauce. And this is an ingredient that I have to admit I don't really use. I love Mexican food. I just tend not to cook a lot of it at home. I mean, I do once in a while, but it's certainly not really very authentic. These are basically dried jalapeno peppers that have been, smoked, and there's seasonings added. There's, tomato sauce and a little vinegar and garlic, and they're spicy and they're smoky. So there's heat and smoke to these peppers. If you love that flavor, then this is great for you. I have to admit, I am not a huge fan of smoky flavor. My husband knows that because he loves to use his big green egg, and he'll smoke a lot of different meats on it, and I'm just not a fan of the smokiness. So if you like that flavor, and it's, again, pretty traditional in Mexican cooking, you're gonna love this soup. I love it too. I am just using a little bit less of the peppers, of the Chipotle peppers, because I don't really want a strong smoky flavor in my soup. The recipe calls for 2, and they're relatively small, so you can see. I'm actually just going to use 1. If you want this to be spicier, then add more. If you really, really love that smoky, deep smoky flavor, then add more than 2. But you probably don't need more than 3, I would think, because that really does add some decent heat and some smokiness. So I'm going to add that in right now with the tomatoes. And the one thing I didn't mention, and that is that that it does call for like half a jalapeno. Again, this is all heat preference. I think that the Chipotle in Adobo has enough heat for me, so I didn't really add the jalapeno pepper. I felt like I didn't need it. If you want more heat, then add as much of a jalapeno, fresh jalapeno as you want. You would want to seed it and then mince it up, and then you would add that just with the garlic and the onion. I just left it out. I was gonna add it, because when I made it the first time, I did add the jalapeno pepper, and it was just a little too hot for me. So I'm gonna leave that out. So now we have that, you know, all these things in here. So we have the smoky peppers and the tomatoes, and we're just gonna let this cook. Kind of want this to cook long enough to sort of concentrate the flavors. So the recipe says to cook this for about 6 to 8 minutes, just so that you're cooking down the tomatoes now and you're blending the flavors with the chili powder and the that chipotle pepper. Just again, this just sort of helps to concentrate the flavors before we're adding the next step. So I'm going to let that cook for just a minute. And while that's cooking, I'm going to just grab a paper towel real quick. While that's cooking, let's just talk a little bit about this dish, because it is a vegetarian tortilla soup. And the one thing that I just wanted to mention is that when it comes to vegetarian food, now, or eating, an eating plan, you know, there's lots of ranges of vegetarian. So, you know, you have vegans, which a vegan eating plan, which would eliminate all animal products. And then there's many different variations along the way. The one concern and the question that I always get about vegetarian eating plans is about protein. And is that a concern? And how do you get protein if you start really cutting out animal products? Because in animal foods, whether it's in dairy or whether it's in the fish or you're eating, or whether it's in animal protein like in, you know, poultry or red meat, the amino acid component those types of proteins contain all 9 essential amino acids in addition to more. So there are amino acids that our bodies can make, and there are amino acids that our bodies cannot make. And there are 9 amino acids that our body cannot make, and those are considered our 9 essential amino acids. When it comes to plant proteins, there's great protein in a lot of plant foods, but most of them don't have all 9 essential amino acids, so they're not considered complete proteins. And our body really needs all those essential amino acids to really help build and process protein within the body. So when it comes to vegetarian eating plans, if you're a vegan and you're really eliminating all animal proteins, then we want to make sure there's enough of those 9 essential amino acids in your diet. With this soup, this is a perfect example of how you can take, you know, there's 2 different types of plant proteins here. So we have our grain, which is going to come from our corn that we're going to add, and from the corn tortilla chips that we're going to add. And then we also have some beans. So we have beans, and we have corn, which is really considered a grain. And when you put those together, now you've just completed, you've made a complete protein. So beans happen to be, have the amino acid lysine in them, and corn or grains tend to be low in lysine. They happen to have another amino acid called methionine, and corn does not. Beans do not. So when you put the beans and the corn or the grain together, now you've just created a complete protein, because you have all 9 essential amino acids coming together through 2 different plant sources. Now, we don't have to eat them together to get the benefit from the amino acids. You don't have to eat them at the same time, as long as you're eating a good variety of different plant proteins throughout your day. Your body will be perfectly able to assimilate all of those amino acids together and use them as a complete protein. Just a little aside, because I get the question all the time about protein being a concern. So it need not be. All right, so I'm gonna turn this down because I've really got, this is really boiling away. But that's okay because we do want to kind of concentrate this down. And I probably have sped this up because I had it pretty high as far as the temperature on the burner. So it's really, it's, you know, cooked down. And I think it's concentrated, it's looking really good. So what I'm gonna do now is we're gonna add our complete protein. So we're gonna add corn. It's about, you know, 2 cups or so of corn. I think this might be a little less. This is what I had left over in my freezer. So we're adding corn, and then I'm gonna add a whole can of black beans. These are low sodium or reduced sodium. That's great. I'm picking up a lot of sodium in the broth that we're gonna use to help balance out the flavor. So I don't necessarily need more salt in the beans. I rinsed them. That whole can is going in. And let me just give that a stir. All right. So we've got pretty much the base of our soup right now. Now we're gonna have to add the liquid. All right, so let me just show this to you real quick. So we've got in here the beans, we have the corn, tomatoes, onions, garlic, the chipotle and the adobo sauce, and if you wanted to, you would be adding a little bit of a jalapeno pepper to that as well. All right. So let's just talk real quick about the broth. So you've got a lot of options. You can use a low sodium vegetable stock here or broth and then season with salt as needed. You could use, if you don't have that and you're not concerned about it being vegetarian, then go ahead and use a chicken broth. That would work just as well. I have about 6 cups of water here. This takes about 5 to 6 cups of water or broth, depending on how thin or thick you want the soup to be. I'm gonna use the Better Than Bouillon because I just love it. It's so convenient. This is their vegetable broth. I have it in my refrigerator. It lasts forever. It is higher in sodium, so I'm just always aware of that when I'm cooking. So I know that the salt and the salt flavor is gonna come from this. I don't need to add more. Typically, I don't need to add more salt to the dish. So I'm gonna use, I'm gonna put in 5 teaspoons of this. And what's nice about the Better Than Bouillon too, is that you don't have to mix it in the water and dilute it out. You can just add it right to your soup. I think that was close to 5. All right, so, and that each of those might have been a little bit more than a teaspoon. All right, and then you can just add your water. So I'm gonna add, I have 6 cups in here. I'm not gonna add all. I'm only gonna add 5. I'll leave about a cup in the bottom just to see if I need it. You may not. You might just want to keep it a little bit thicker. All right, so I'm gonna really crank this heat up. So that's it. So now I'm just gonna stir this around, and I wanna just break up that Better Than Bouillon paste that I added so that it breaks down into the soup. All right, so we're gonna let that go. And then that's it. So you're gonna wanna cook this now for maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. And just kind of, again, we're just sort of bringing the flavors together. We're just trying to reduce it a little bit, but not too much. And then the soup's ready to go. I'm gonna jump ahead because I think the real fun part about this soup are the toppings. So it's like how you wanna assemble this soup. So if you can do this in a million different ways. There's so many different toppings that you can put on, but it's nice to kind of go with a bunch of different things. All right, so I am jumping ahead. So this soup is gonna be a little bit thinner than it would be once it's completely done, but I wanna show you. So let me just ladle out some of the soup so that you can see. All right, and then, so here's our soup, and then to top it, I would serve this with a little squeeze of lime, and then maybe even a little lime wedge on the side if you wanted to. I actually am using chopped parsley. My family does not like cilantro, so you can use cilantro, but I just have some chopped parsley. And what I love about this soup is that most of the ingredients are pantry ingredients, so they're gonna be coming out of your pantry or out of your freezer, and it's most things that you probably have in your pantry. And then what we're gonna do is we're just finishing it with some freshness, right? So now we're gonna use some fresh herbs to put on top, some fresh lime juice to give it a little zing. I chopped up some scallions because I had them in my refrigerator, so I'm going to sprinkle a few scallions on top as well. And then you can do a little dollop of guacamole if you have it. I just happen to have ripe avocados. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes you want your avocado and it's not really ripe, but I do. I had a couple on hand, so I'm going to take a couple of avocados, a couple dices of the avocado, and I'm going to top it with that as well. And then this is now going to become more vegetarian than vegan for me. I'm going to put a little dollop of some Greek yogurt, some thick yogurt on top as well. And that I love yogurt with this because it helps to cut the heat. So if the soup tends to be a little bit on the spicy side, that the yogurt really helps to sort of mellow that out. If you want to go full vegan, then just use a vegan yogurt or skip the yogurt. You don't necessarily need it, but you could use like a coconut yogurt if you would prefer. And then what makes this a tortilla soup is you need tortillas. So just corn tortillas, and I would just take a couple, and again, this is going to add a little bit of crunch and a little saltiness, and it really brings all the flavors together. So just take a few and just give them a little squeeze and crunch and break them up, and then just put them right on top. And here you have it. So here's the crunchy vegetarian tortilla soup. That's super easy, mostly pantry ingredients, but then the fun part is at the end. When you can make this soup, I think it'd be fun to make the soup, put it out, put all your toppings out, and let everybody kind of top their soup the way that they want to, which would be a lot of fun. But definitely don't skip the tortillas because that's what gives this soup that final crunch. So here you have it. If you want to jump over to my blog, and if I think of it, I'll drop the recipe in the notes or the comment section. I'm going to be doing another cooking demonstration later today for a company, and we're going to be focusing on rainbow cauliflower tacos. They're phenomenal. I didn't think I wanted to do another cauliflower recipe because I feel like there's so many of them, but this is definitely worth it. I will post that recipe so that you can pick that up as well. It's another great one. And again, it happens to be gluten-free and vegan. So that wasn't the intention, but it just worked out that way. So that's even better. All right, so enjoy your day, and I will see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.